classification of poisons, right? So SYNCAM C is corrosives. So next one is I, irritants. So actually irritants, okay, before actually going to the metallic poisons, we'll see how these irritant poisons are classified. So irritant poisons are again classified into metallic and non-metallic. So metallic, so as the name suggests, they are metals, and non-metallic, so they are inorganic and non-metallic poisons. So next is the organic poisons. So as you know, organic means from living source, and it contains carbon, and these are classified into organic plant irritants and organic animal irritants. Right. So in the organic plant irritants, there are different examples. Okay, these are the examples of different non-metallic, metallic, and plant irritants and animal irritant poisons. And finally, the third group of irritants is mechanical irritants. So inorganic and organic and mechanical. So these are the three main groups. And in the inorganic, there are metallic and non-metallic, and in the organic, there are plants and animals based on the source of their these poisons. And finally, the mechanical poisons, mechanical irritant poisons, which are actually powdered glass, powdered down, diamond dust. So all these comes under powdered mechanical irritant poisons. Okay, so okay, before actually going into the signs and symptoms of different metallic poisons, I'll just talk about the important signs of irritant poisons as a whole. Means both the inorganic, organic, and the mechanical irritants, all of them actually have similar type of similar type of signs and symptoms. That is why they are classified under irritants, right? So they have those irritant symptoms. That is why they are called irritant poisons. So they will cause irritation. So actually, when you take those corrosive poisons, what they will do, they will actually cause corrosion, right? And there are, when you actually dilute those corrosive poisons, they also actually act as irritant poisons. So you actually make them, depending upon the fatal dose, if you actually dilute those irritant poison, corrosive poisons, they will actually become irritant poisons. So they will cause the mild irritation wherever actually they come in contact with, right? Similarly, these irritant poisons, which are actually classified under irritants. Okay, so they have similar signs and symptoms. So we'll see what are those signs and symptoms of different irritant poisons. So okay. So they are local symptoms. So where actually they will come in contact with. So appear within that 15 to 30 minutes. Most commonly, these irritant poisons can cause irritation wherever they come in contact with, right? So they can cause irritation when they come in contact with eyes. They will cause irritation on the eyes. When they come in contact with the skin, they also can cause irritation of the symptoms. But on the skin, and when they come in contact with the mouth, they will cause irritation of the mouth. And when they enter into the GIT, they will cause irritation in the upper GIT, right? So what are those symptoms? So burning sensation in the mouth, starting from mouth to the stomach and abdomen. So when actually somebody consumes them, they will get those symptoms even in the stomach. Right? And intense thirst, difficulty in swallowing, and vomiting will be present. And the vomiters will be, initially there will be normal, the contents of the stomach will be vomited out. Later it will be bilious, and finally the dark brown colored altered blood will actually come out in the vomiters. So diarrhea is actually another symptom which is common in case of irritant poisons. And first actually there will be loose stools, later mixed with blood and mucus. That is, dysentery will be present. So along with diarrhea, there will be dysentery in case of irritant poisons because of the shedding of the mucosa and also shedding of the blood, okay, blood in the stools. And collapse from shock. So because of this excessive loss of water through vomitus and diarrhea, so what happens, there will be hypovolemia and shock will be present, which leads to collapse. So what are the signs of collapse or shock? cold, clammy skin, rapid feeble pulse, sighing respirations, cramps, and convulsions, and finally the person actually may go into a state of coma. So death occurs within 24 hours from shock or in few days from exhaustion in cases where there is no treatment was given after the poisoning by these irritants, right? So this is common to most of these irritant poisons. So actually, for example, if you don't remember the specific signs and symptoms of that particular irritant poison, just you can write those general signs of irritant poison, and okay, you may get okay at least pass marks, right? So coming to the metallic poisons, so that is the actually topic we are going to talk about today. So the first one is the arsenic. So as you can see there, it is called as a poison of kings and king of poisons. Why? Because actually in olden days it is used. It is used in okay, to kill the kings actually. So actually they used to poison the king, okay, by mixing this arsenic in different food 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 products. And okay, it leads to chronic poisoning and death. So that's king of poisons. Why king of poisons? It's actually in olden days it's very common. Okay, poisoning by arsenic was common. Okay, so that is why it is called as poison of kings and king of poisons. Okay, so coming to the classification of these metallic poisons, that is arsenic. So if you want to actually completely classify this poison into a group, you have to call it inorganic metallic irritant poison. Okay, so like that. Okay, inorganic non-metallic irritant poisons, inorganic plant irritant poisons, like that. Okay, so you have to classify completely. When somebody asks a question, arsenic poisoning, okay, it can be asked as an essay also. Arsenic, very very important essay question, right? So when they ask you, start with okay, come into the group of inorganic metallic irritant poison, right? And actually in metallic form it is actually black in color and water, insoluble in water. Okay, in metallic form it is actually not soluble in water, and but it continuously, when exposed to air, it will actually continuously take that oxygen in the air and convert it into arsenous oxide, which is actually a tasteless and smellless and it is a highly poisonous substance. Okay, arsenous oxide, which is actually soluble, right? And other sources of arsenic include white arsenic, the other arsenous oxide, arsenous trioxide. It's actually the most common form of poisoning, arsenic, which causes poisoning. That is commonly found in insecticides and okay, these rat poisons mixed with milk and okay, used in milk or tea and used in homicides. Right? And sulfides of arsenic like trisulfide, arsenic trisulfide and arsenic disulfide. So that is yellow arpament and red realgar, and other copper compounds. That is, there is arsenic and also copper in that particular compound. So Shields green, that is copper arsenide, and Paris or emerald green is copper aceto arsenide. So as you can see, this is the first one. Okay, this black colored metal. So it is the pure metallic form is actually black in colors, right? Acetopyrite, it is actually, it's like silvery white in color, and realgar, red realgar. Okay, so that is a disulfide of arsenic, arpament trisulfide of arsenic. Okay, so these are different forms of okay, arsenic, which are actually poisonous to humans, right? And coming to the actions, so most of these metallic poisons will actually have these affinity towards the sulfhydryl groups in the cellular enzymes. Okay, so they interfere with the cellular metabolism by combining with the sulfhydryl groups in the metabolic enzymes. Okay, so actually causes uncoupling of mitochondrial oxidate phosphorylation by inhibiting the pyruvate dehydrogenase. Okay, what happens? So it will actually stop the process of conversion of pyruvate to acetyl CoA. So in the process of after glycolysis, so after glycolysis, pyruvic acid is produced, right? And it enters into the Krebs cycle by converting into acetyl CoA, right? So this acetyl CoA is not produced because of the uncoupling of mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation by the arsenic compounds, right? And particular okay, in case of poisoning by arsenic, the particular target is vascular endothelial system, right? And there will be, which leads to, so because of the interference of this arsenic in the vascular endothelium, there will be increased permeability of the vasculature, leading to edema and hemorrhage, right? And in large doses actually quickly absorbed and produce vertigo, headache, spasms, leading to stupor and vascular collapse. Okay, and fatal dose is minimum 100 to 200 milligrams of arsenic actually can kill a person. Fatal period is dependent on the dose of the poisoning. That is in case of fulminant poisoning, where more than 2 to 3 grams of arsenic is taken at a time. What happens? The death is within 2 to 3 hours after consumption of the poison. But in case of gastrointestinal form, which is which is otherwise known as acute form of acute poisoning by arsenic, the death may actually occur within 48 hours. That is 12 to 48 hours after the consumption of the poison. In case of subacute poisoning, 7 to 10 days, and in case of chronic poisoning, it will actually take up to months. So that is why actually it is one of the poisons which is used in the during the times of kings. I told you, right? So they will mix with food and in small quantities they will feed, and actually the person will die after so many months, or okay, even after a year. So what do the people think? Okay, he is suffering from a disease and died, so they will not suspect that he was poisoned, right? So that is why it is mixed with food and given as a homicidal poison. Okay, coming to the fulminant poisoning, which actually is uncommon. That is not common in case of arsenic poisoning, but it can occur if it is given in higher doses. So 3 to 5 grams of arsenic actually can kill a person within 2 to 3 hours after consumption of the poison. Right? And rapid death, and actually there will be no gastrointestinal symptoms will be present. Only there will be symptoms of shock and peripheral vascular collapse will be present in cases where the person has experienced this fulminant poison. So next is the acute poisoning, otherwise known as gastroenteric type of poisoning. So actually what happens, it occurs within 15 minutes of ingestion. The symptoms will actually start appearing. So there will be garlicky odor, nausea, burning, pain in the stomach. Okay, persistent vomiting, which contains the stomach contents along with the bile and mixed blood and mucus. Diarrhea with tenesmus, you know tenesmus, right? So tenesmus is nothing but okay, there will be increased frequency of defecation, and even after going to defecation, he cannot actually empty the stomach completely. So what happens? There will be increased frequency. Okay, and also it will be painful, right? And there will be anal irritation also will be present, and this rice water stools of cholera. So what happens? The stool will be white in color, okay, which actually resembles that of the cholera stools. Okay, so in cholera also the color of the stools is white, right? So this arsenic poisoning, acute poisoning by arsenic, will produce white colored stools, okay, which resembles that of the cholera, right? And it actually also contains the mucus and also the altered blood, right? And there will be intense thirst and painful cramps in the legs and cold, clammy skin. So all these are actually signs of collapse. So that I actually already told you during the introduction itself. The irritant poisons, okay, when they produce this acute poisoning, they will actually produce these signs of irritation leading to vomiting and diarrhea, finally producing the shock and the signs of shock, including collapse, cold, clammy skin, pale face, sunken eyes, rapid pulse, and sighing respiration. So these are common in case of most of these irritant poisons, right? In acute form, right? Okay, next is convulsions and coma may precede death in cases where the person did not go for did not have the medical attention. Right? And treatment of acute poisoning includes gastric lavage. Okay, so when somebody comes with a history of poisoning, so the first thing is actually decontamination, right? So actually you remove from the exposure and actually do the gastric lavage, which is one of the important steps. Actually, the textbook says only up to 4 hours you can do the gastric lavage with more effect. Even after 12 hours also you can actually attempt a gastric lavage, because these most of the poisons will actually delay the gastric emptying. So even after 12 hours you actually can remove some poison which is left over in the stomach. Okay, so that's why okay, you just can try, and if nothing is coming, you just then you can stop gastric lavage. But that is one of the important steps in the treatment of poisoning. Okay, and you know where it is contraindicated, right? Absolutely contraindicated in corrosive poisoning, and relatively contraindicated in different poisons, where volatile poisons, okay, where the person is in coma, where it's other okay, esophageal varices. So there are different conditions, right? So in those conditions they are relatively contraindicated. Otherwise you actually can do gastric lavage, right? And calcium magnesia charcoal can be used as a demolition, and actually charcoal is actually physical antidote, right? And demolitions can also be used, and saline purgatives. So what these purgatives will do, so they will actually eliminate the poison from the intestines by increasing the okay feces, right? So increasing the elimination through feces. Okay, next coming to the treatment. So okay, during the general toxicology itself we have learned this treatment of metallic poisons is through the chelating agents, right? So the chelating agents are the mainstay of treatment in case of all the metallic poisons, and in case of arsenic poisoning, the specific antidote, specific chelating agent is British anti-levisite, that is BAL. Okay, so it is the specific antidote in case of arsenic poison. So actually this BAL, British anti-levisite, contains two sulfidal radicals that actually combine with arsenic and form a okay, and it dislodges the arsenic from the tissues and these tissue enzymes, and finally that that compound, that soluble compound which is present in the blood, will be excreted through the kidneys, right? And you can also use the dimercaptose succinic acid or dimercaptopropane sulfonate. Okay, but the specific antidote is British anti-levisite. And D-penicillamine can also be used if the above mentioned antidotes are not available. Okay, so next is the supportive treatment, and most of the times, okay, in case of acute poisoning, supportive treatment is very important and crucial, because I told you if there is no medical treatment, the person will actually go into shock and die due to the shock. Okay, signs of shock, right? So in this case, supportive treatment includes okay, reverting the shock by giving the parental fluids, glucose or sodium bicarbonate to actually eliminate poison. Okay, to make it alkaline, and because it leads to acidosis, right? And morphine to combat pain, ice to combat thirst, renal dialysis actually in cases where their kidneys have failed due to this poisoning, right? So actually other symptomatic treatment actually you should continue depending upon the symptoms the person is facing. You actually continue the different okay treatment regimes, but the mainstay is giving the specific antidote, and okay, before that actually you actually decontaminate and eliminate the poisoning from the before it gets absorbed into the circulation, right? And coming to the chronic poisoning actually, which is which occurs when actually due to the after effects of acute poisoning or repeated ingestion of the small quantities. What happens in these metallic poisons? So you know the factors influencing the poisoning: accumulation. So this okay, all these metallic poisons are cumulative poisons. Okay, they'll actually get accumulated into different tissues. Okay, they'll get accumulated into different tissues, and they will actually get okay, insidiously excreted into the circulation and leading to signs and symptoms of okay, poisoning by that particular metal, right? And excretory function is actually interfered. Okay, in cases of acute poisoning, that also can lead to okay, storing of these arsenic in the body and leading to chronic poisoning by arsenic. So these are the three possibilities of a chronic poisoning. The first one is effects of acute, okay, after effects of acute poisoning. Second one is ingestion in small doses, or finally excretion is decreased due to the failure of the kidneys. So these are the three. And okay, where the person actually can get exposed to small quantities of arsenic through water, not only through homicidal poisoning but also through accidental poisoning by consuming water that is contaminated with arsenic. So most commonly these tube wells, okay, wells are there, no? So they actually get contaminated by arsenic because arsenic is abundant in earth. Okay, so soil contains arsenic, so that is a that will also be present in the tube wells, and that when somebody drinks that water containing high concentrations of arsenic, they actually get chronic poisoning. Right? What are the signs of chronic poisoning? So the onset will be insidious. So the signs will appear slowly, but surely they will actually cause more severe symptoms. And they start with generalized weakness, anorexia, and the garlic odor in the smell. That is actually due to the arsine. So how arsine is formed? So when somebody consumes arsenic, what happens? It reacts with hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So actually these metals react with acids, will produce these okay, compounds, which okay, in case of arsenic it will produce arsine, which actually give this garlicky odor to the person who actually consume this arsenic over a period of time. Right? And then the other symptoms include gradual emaciation and loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, which is also common in case of acute poisoning, which is also present in case of chronic poisoning by arsenic. Right? And catarrhal changes, so there will be congestion of the mucosa. So it can okay, it can cause okay, congestion of the nasal mucosa leading to cold, congestion of the pharynx leading to cough, congestion of the eyes leading to conjunctivitis, hoarseness of voice when pharynx is when larynx is involved, you can get this hoarseness of voice. And also when the lungs, okay, or bronchi are involved, there will be bronchial catarrh leading to acute bronchitis, and the symptoms of bronchitis can also be seen. Right? And other signs include hair, skin, and nail changes. Actually, I told you this is a cumulative poison, and this will actually get accumulated in the body. Okay, where most commonly it will be accumulated in the skin, hair, and nails. Okay, so this arsenic will actually get accumulated in all these parts, and that will give different dermatological signs of chronic arsenic poisoning. Okay, these are very, very important signs because this will help in identifying a case of chronic poisoning by seeing, just by seeing without any tests, you can actually detect that okay, he is suffering with chronic arsenic poisoning. So the most important signs include mottled appearance of the skin, so otherwise known as raindrop pigmentation. So raindrop pigmentation is nothing but brownish black pigmented areas on the skin. Okay, in case of chronic arsenic poisoning, they are known as raindrop pigmentation of the skin. And also there will be hyperkeratosis of the skins of palms and soles. So as you can see in this photograph, so there are, okay, the palms and soles we are hyperkeratose, along with the, okay, wart-like structures are present on the hands. Okay, it is also an important sign of chronic arsenic poison. There will be alopecia, that is loss of hair will be present, thickening of the nails and development of bands of opacity, okay, in the fingernails, toes, and also, okay, which denote the periods of arrested growth due to arsenic poisoning, and they are called as Aldrich-Mees lines. Okay, these are nothing but the bands of opacity that are present on the nails of the toes and the fingers. Okay, they are called as Aldrich-Mees lines. Okay, they are thickened lines. So these are the Aldrich-Mees lines, which actually denote the signs of or the chronic arsenic poisoning. Okay, and here you can see different, okay, drop like things. Okay, that is actually hyperpigmented spots on the skin. Okay, most commonly on the back, so you actually can see anywhere, right? So these are called as raindrop pigmentation. So So they appear like drops, right? So on the skin, so they are called as raindrop pigmentation. And this is hyperkeratosis of the soles and also the okay, hands and also the soles. Okay, so these are the important signs of chronic arsenic poisoning. So other signs include muscle wasting, peripheral neuritis, ataxia, So you know what is ataxia. So I'm not actually talking in detail about all those signs because you might have learned all these clinical terms during your posting in clinics, right? So ataxia. So A means no, right? Ataxia. So there is lack of coordination in the muscles, leading to incoordinated gait. So that is called as ataxia. And the hematological findings include bone marrow suppression, gangrene due to vascular endothelial involvement. So okay, these arsenic has high affinity towards vascular endothelium, so that also produces vascular damage and signs of vascular damage. Right? And damage to the liver and kidney also will be present. So liver damage can lead to jaundice, abdominal pain, hepatomegaly will be present. In few cases, it can actually progress to cirrhosis, and in very rare cases, it actually can also lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. And cardiovascular signs include peripheral vascular disease. Okay, it has been observed in persons with chronic exposure to arsenic, and the important signs of cardiovascular involvement include acrocyanosis. So as the name suggests, so acro means these limbs. So there will be cyanosis in the limbs. So most commonly on the fingers and toes, they will show cyanosis. And there will be also Raynaud's phenomenon, which is actually commonly seen in case of uh, cold, right? So actually more frostbite and all these cases where there will be peripheral vascular constriction. Peripheral vascular constriction, most commonly the small arteries that are supplying the peripheries of the limbs will be constricted, leading to gangrene and endarteritis, right? So that is Raynaud's phenomenon. So actually it will be seen in case of cold exposure, right? So that also is common in case of arsenic, chronic poisoning by arsenic, because of the affinity of this arsenic to the vascular endothelium, right? And gangrene of the lower extremities, okay, is also common because of the endarteritis that is produced due to the chronic arsenic poisoning. So this gangrene of the lower extremities leading to blackening of the foot is called as black foot disease, right? And coming to the treatment of chronic poisoning, actually in case of acute poisoning, specific antidote, that is British anti-levisite, is this mainstay of treatment. Before that you are going to go do the gastric lavage and all those purgation and all these things can be used. But in case of treatment in chronic poisoning, gastric lavage actually doesn't have any role, but you have to remove the person from the source of exposure, and then you can give specific antidote, that is British anti-levisite. So even in case of chronic poisoning, you can use the specific antidote British anti-levisite. And other supportive treatments include vitamin B complex and IV sodium thiosulfate. Actually, it will increase the elimination of the poison from the blood. Okay, and recovery most commonly occurs within 6 to 12 months. Okay, it is in months. Okay, so it will take long for a person if you remove from the source of exposure. So, for example, if somebody is exposed to this chronic arsenic poisoning due to the increased intake of arsenic from water, if you don't remove him from the source, even if you give treatment, okay, he will not actually get recovered from the symptoms, right? Because he is still accumulating, right? So you should stop this, remove the person from the source of exposure, and you have to treat with a specific antidote for the person actually to recover within 6 to 12 months of treatment. Okay, coming to the diagnosis. So actually, because these are metals, right? So this can be diagnosed by using neutron activation analysis. Actually, there were so many other tests that were used, Mars tests. Okay, so all those tests were actually obsolete now. They are not being used nowadays. Next, coming to the postmortem findings. When actually are doing an autopsy on a person who is poisoned by arsenic. What are the signs that what are the things that you expect during postmortem examination? So rigor mortis actually lasts for longer. So the person will have, okay, longer periods of rigor mortis. You know this rule of 12. So here in case it may be 24 hours, where actually the person actually will have rigor mortis staying for 24 hours. And the person will be dehydrated and cyanosis in appearance, skin and nail changes will be present. Okay, that we have already discussed. Samples. So apart from the routine viscera that is collected, okay, in routine cases of poisoning, so there are specific things that you should preserve in case of arsenic poisoning. So the most important things include hair with bulb and the lower end of the femur. And actually the femur is the most important specimen that should be preserved to identify the poison. And in cases where you found a femur bone, and if you actually send it for analysis, even after 20 to 30 years after exposure, you actually can get the positive analytic findings in case of poisoning by arsenic. Okay, so because it is preserved in the bones, you actually send it and you actually get the positive results if it is present. Right, and ends of the long bones are preferred, but most commonly preferred bone is femur. And postmortem imbibition of the arsenic, that is when somebody does an exhumation. So it is very important in case of exhumation, where you are digging out a body from the grave. What happens? So there will be imbibition of the arsenic from the soil into the body of a person, okay, who is buried. Right? So that actually can give false positive results. Okay, so you should remember that when you are exhumating and sending it for the chemical analysis, you are supposed to send that soil surrounding the body. Okay, if the soil contains arsenic, you actually can exclude that arsenic poisoning if it is present in the body. That is indicating that it is a false positive result. And internal findings in case of poisoning include stomach will, in case of acute poisoning, the stomach will actually show the red velvety appearance. Why red velvety? So red because of the excessive congestion, and velvety, that is due to the edematous and swelling of this mucosa, that will give this red velvety appearance to the stomach. In case of carbolic acid poisoning, what is the appearance? So that leathery appearance, right? So here, in case of arsenic poisoning, red velvety appearance. Right? And large erosions of pyloric end will be present, and the submucosal petechial hemorrhages will be seen. Garlicky odor will be present when you actually open the stomach. You actually can smell that garlicky odor. And actually, garlicky odor is not specific to arsenic. There are other poisons like phosphorus also will be odor. Okay, so if you find red velvety stomach with garlicky odor, you can actually diagnose as arsenic poison. Okay, these findings suggest that it is arsenic poison. Right, and subendocardial hemorrhages will be seen in the heart, liver, heart, kidney actually may show fatty degeneration. In chronic poisoning, there will be retardation of the decomposition. Okay, it is not retarded in case of acute poisoning, but the decomposition is retarded in case of poisoning, chronic poisoning by arsenic. Okay, so medical legal importance. So accidental poisoning can occur when somebody consumes water that is contaminated with or food contaminated with arsenic. Suicidal is very rare, and homicidal, which actually I told you it was used as as a homicidal poison in the past, right? Because it has few characteristics of an ideal homicidal poison. So actually, you know what is the ideal homicidal poison? Characteristics: it should be cheap, easily available, and small lethal dose. It should not be detected by normal tests, tasteless, odorless, so that it can mix. Okay, so all these are actually signs of characteristics of an ideal homicidal poison, right? But arsenic has a very more characteristics of an ideal homicidal poison than actually not. So we'll see why it is actually. It was not now. It was cheap and easily available. Now we actually cannot get arsenic that much easily, but previously it was easily available. So it was used. It has been used as an ideal homicidal poison, and it also tasteless, odorless, and it can be easily mixed with food and given. Okay, and the before the person actually identifies that he was poisoned. And symptoms actually appear later in case of acute poisoning, and in case of chronic poisoning, so he will actually have this anorexia, malaise, okay, generalized weakness and die after so many months, isn't it? So what happens? The person, nobody will actually suspect that he was poisoned, right? And okay, in case of acute poisoning, so the symptoms will actually mimic cholera, right, or food poisoning. So that is actually important finding that will okay, mask arsenic poisoning, because the people think that he died of cholera, which was common in olden days, right? So that is why okay, the death will actually look like a natural death, right? And chronic poisoning actually will produce delayed death. Okay, so that also is an important thing that will actually help that person who is trying to kill that other person, right? So the characteristics uh, which are against it to be used as an ideal homicidal poison or retards putrefaction. So okay, you can actually easily detect even the smallest quantity of arsenic from the blood or in the bone marrow, hair. So it will be preserved in the body. So there are so many tests to detect. So the person actually, if you test, the person will actually, it will be caught. Right? Heat actually doesn't destroy, and it will be concentrated in the, okay, in those keratinized tissues. So you can easily detect the poison. So which is against the characteristic of an ideal homicidal poison. Okay, so that is regarding the arsenic poison. Okay, it's a very, very, very important essay question. Okay, sometimes they will ask a few short notes. Okay, from arsenic. Okay, next one is lead. So this is also very, very, very important short essay question. There are so many short notes questions in lead also, right? So in case of metallic poisons, these are the two very, very important poisons. Okay, so arsenic and lead. So they both can, any of them can be used as an essay, right? Okay. So coming to the lead, Sisha, because actually it is present in the mirror, right? That is lead. So it is also a metallic poison. So when you actually want to classify it, it is an inorganic metallic irritant poison. That is the complete class to which it belongs. Inorganic metallic irritant poison. Okay. So coming to the characteristics of lead, so it is soluble, and soluble compounds are more poisonous, and volatile lead is more lethal, because when fumes are inhaled, they will actually get absorbed fastly, and they will be more poisonous when compared to liquids, or when compared to solid form of any poison. And it actually can access body by inhalation, ingestion, and absorption through intact skin also. Okay, even an intact skin also can absorb. Okay, can absorb lead, right, along with the mucous membrane. Right. Coming to the sources of lead. So lead acetate or sugar of lead, uh, which is actually salt of Saturn, that is lead, and lead oxide, lead carbonate, lead tetroxide. So you just remember these two are very, very important ones: lead tetroxide and tetraethyl. So lead tetroxide is actually present in Vermilion, Sindur. So kumkamam, just will keep, right. So females will keep commonly on their forehead. That actually contains some metals, actually including lead and mercury. So lead tetroxide, if it is made of lead tetroxide, it contains. Right? So next is lead chromate, that is yellow lead, and lead tetraethyl lead. Actually, it is commonly present as a anti-knock. What is anti-knock? To reduce the sound of the engines. Okay, when you mix with petrol. So what they will do? They will mix tetraethyl lead to petrol to make it high octane. Okay, so speed petrol so contains more amounts of lead when compared to normal, right? So like that. Okay, so that is anti-knock, and it contains tetraethyl lead. Okay, lead tetroxide is sindur, tetraethyl lead is anti-knock. Okay, so for coming to the pharmacodynamics of lead, so it is actually distributed throughout the body tissues. So all the body, no body tissues are spared. So it will be accumulated in bones, teeth, liver, kidney, spleen, brain. So all the body tissues actually it will get actually accumulated, right? And bones actually can constitute the source of remobilization. So as I told you, in okay, all these metallic poisons are cumulative poisons. Actually, they get accumulated in different parts, right? And in case of lead, what happens? It will actually get accumulated into different bones, and the after some time when actually the pH of the body comes down, what happens? This accumulated lead from the bones will actually get re-excreted into the or remobilized into the tissue, into the blood. Okay, that producing the symptoms of acute poisoning. Okay, on chronic usage, right? And also lead is carried out by RBC. So it will be distributed to the tissues through RBC. And lead crosses blood-brain barrier, and it will be concentrated in the brain, gray matter of the brain. Okay, lead actually crosses placenta also. So even if the mother exposes to lead, the fetus also will actually get exposed to lead. And coming to the excretion of the lead, so it will be excreted. Okay, in case depending upon the concentration of the lead that is accumulated in the body, it will be excreted at from 200 micrograms to 30 micrograms to 200 micrograms per day. Right? And also it will be excreted through feces. Coming to the mechanism of lead toxicity, so already you know how these arsenic will cause lead poisoning. So by combining with the sulfhydryl groups in the metabolic enzymes. So similarly, lead also has the same properties. That is actually they have the affinity towards the sulfhydryl groups in different metabolic enzymes leading to toxicity. So, for example, in case of heme synthesis, okay, if it involves the enzymes involved in heme synthesis, what happens? There will be faulty hemoglobin. So, porphyrin synthesis is faulty, leading to faulty RBC. Okay, and also it also involves steroid. It involves in enzymes in steroid metabolism, interference with vitamin D synthesis. So all these will be interfered, leading to different manifestations of chronic poisoning by lead. Okay, so there will be increase in autoimmunity due to lead, depletion of the glutathione. So which is glutathione is is a very important free radical scavenger. Right? So there will be increased levels of free radicals due to decreased glutathione levels because of the lead toxicity, right? So coming to the acute poisoning, actually acute poisoning is rare in metallic poisons and very rare in case of poisoning by lead. Okay, if it occurs, the signs and symptoms will be similar to that of arsenic poisoning, like symptoms of irritation and gastrointestinal symptoms will be present in case of acute poisoning by lead. Only thing is the diarrhea is actually replaced by constipation in case of poisoning by acute poisoning by lead. And there will be cramps in the legs and arthralgia will be present, headache, drowsiness, and paralysis of the limbs. Collapse precede death, and tetraethyl lead actually has no gastrointestinal symptoms. That is, Antinoc has no gastrointestinal symptoms. Fatal dose, a lead acetate contains 20 grams of lead acetate is fatal, and 4 grams of lead carbonate is can lead to death of a person. Few drops of tetraethyl lead, which is used as antenna, can also kill a person. Right? Coming to the treatment, stomach wash. So in case of acute poisoning, it has stomach wash as a role. In case of acute poisoning, where you actually do the normal gastric lavage, right? And 1% magnesium or sodium sulfate can be used as a purgative, so to actually increase the excretion through feces. Right? And demolitions can be used to reduce the irritant action of this poison on the stomach, right? So demolitions, these physical antidotes which actually acts as a mechanical barrier on the wall of the stomach to reduce the actual absorption, and also because these are irritant poisons, they will reduce the irritant symptoms of the poison. And morphine and atropine actually can be used for colic. So actually there will be severe abdominal intestinal spasms leading to colic will be present in case of lead poisoning. So you can use this for treating in the during the treatment morphine and atropine naturally to reduce the spasms. And the calcium favors deposition of the lead in case of acute poisoning. You want to remove the poison from the blood, right? So in cases where excessive blood concentrations of lead is present, you can use calcium so that this lead will actually get deposited into the bones and which will be stored in the bones. And peritoneal dialysis also can be used to treat the acute poisoning where there is renal failure or to actually rapidly eliminate the poison, right? And next is the chronic poisoning, which is very, very common in case of lead poisoning. Okay. So the other names for chronic poisoning by lead is plumbism, saturnism, and saturnine poisoning. Okay. So why all these names? Okay, the name, the scientific names plumbum, right? So that is plumbism, saturnine, so saturnism, right? So okay, inhalation of the lead fumes in glass workers and paint. Okay, actually, paints will actually contain high concentrations of lead. Okay, okay, and home stored food. Okay, stored food lead tins. Okay, actually may contain lead which will be leached into the food and somebody get chronic poison when somebody uses those foods, especially salty foods stored in the tin vessels, right? And mobilization from bones to in acidosis. So when there is acidosis, okay, acid blood actually will leach the lead from the bones that is stored in the bones. So even though it is a chronic poisoning, so the symptoms are actually acute. So the symptoms will appear suddenly. Okay. So the symptoms include facial pallor around the mouth due to vasospasm, anemia with basophilic stippling, basophilic punctate basophilia, otherwise basophilic stippling. It is nothing but granular appearance. Okay, dark blue colored granular appearance in the cytoplasm of the RBC, which mimics a basophil, okay, which mimics a basophil, but it is an RBC that contains these basophilic granules in the cytoplasm. So they are called as the basophilic stippling or punctate basophilia, which is common peripheral smear finding in case of chronic lead poisoning. Okay, and eosinophilia is also present, and lead line is nothing but a stippled lead bluish line on the gums due to deposition of lead sulfide. So where is this sulfide came from? So actually this hydrogen sulfide is produced in the mouth by these mouth organisms, and that hydrogen sulfide in that hydrogen sulfide will react with the plumb lead in the oral mucosa, and that actually will get deposited, that lead sulfide will get deposited on the gums, especially over the anterior teeth, on the canine teeth most commonly. And this blue line, that is Buttonian line or lead line, is seen in case of 50 to 70% cases of chronic poisoning by lead. Okay, so there are actually other metallic poisons where this line can be seen. Okay, the like mercury poisoning, copper poisoning, bismuth, iron, and silver. But the color of the line is slightly different from that of the lead poisoning, which is blue in color. Right? So as you can see there, so as you can see, this is the canine, right? So mostly over the canine. Okay, also here you can slightly see that bluish coloration on the gum. Okay, so this is known as Buttonian line. Okay, so you remember this. This can be asked as a 2 marks question, and you can see these are the RBC with the basophilic stippling. Okay, so RBC with basophilic stippling, teardrop cells also can be seen, and eosinophilia is also a sign of chronic lead poisoning. right? And colic and constipation are very common in case of chronic poisoning, and the colic is very severe. It is known as dry belly ache because it is not followed by diarrhea, it is followed by constipation, so dry. So the person will be dry, and he will have severe stomach pain. Okay, there will be paralysis, which is actually common in 10% of cases, and it is a late manifestation of chronic lead poisoning, and it is actually due to the it leads to degeneration and atrophy of the muscles. Okay, so what happens? The muscles paralysis will lead to degeneration and atrophy of the muscles, and there will be wrist drop and also foot drop will be seen in chronic poisoning by lead. And the reproductive system signs include menstrual disorders, so there will be a menorrhagia or hypomenorrhea may be present, and death of the fetus and abortion is also common if, okay, especially in the first and second trimester of pregnancy, when somebody is exposed to lead during pregnancy, because it can cross blood brain barrier, right? And because it can cross brain, okay, sorry, it can cross blood brain, it can cross placenta, it leads to abortion and death of the fetus. Because it can cross blood brain barrier, it leads to encephalopathy. It's actually very common in tetraethyl lead, because even smaller quantities of tetraethyl lead is lethal, right? So it is very common in case of tetraethyl lead, and also common in case of children exposure to tetraethyl lead. Okay, so the signs and symptoms of lead encephalopathy include loss of appetite, lethargy, dizziness, vomiting, and irritability will be present. So any encephalopathy will actually produce the symptoms of irritability, and recurrent convulsions and mental deterioration will be present, and optic atrophy can also be seen, and progressing to ataxia and reduced levels of consciousness. And finally, ataxia actually is due to the involvement of cerebellum, right? So that is the part of the brain which deals with coordination, right? So okay, there will be involvement of the cerebellum, involvement of the optic nerve, involvement of the, okay, entire cerebrum will be present, and because of the deposition of this lead in the gray matter of the brain. Okay, finally the person will actually go into the stage of coma and may die due to lead encephalopathy, right? Coming to the treatment, identify and remove the source of exposure. So remove, if somebody is exposing, okay, who is a painter exposing to the paints, you stop him, okay, from working that painting work, right? So depending upon the source of exposure, you just remove the person from the source of exposure. That is the mainstay of treatment in all the chronic poisonings. Okay, nutritional therapy, because there is anemia is there in the case where there is a, okay, led to chronic lead poisoning. So you just should make sure that the nutritional balance, the nutrition will be given to that particular person. So diets rich in iron and calcium are important. Calcium actually will make the excess lead to actually get deposited into bones. And British anti-leucite BAL, so it is it is not actually the specific antidote. The specific antidote is ethylene diaminate tetraestate. That is the specific antidote in case of lead poisoning. And British anti-leucite can also be used, okay, in case of lead poisoning. But the specific antidote is EDTA, calcium EDTA. Okay, dicalcium EDTA is the specific antidote in case of poisoning by lead. Okay. Postmortem appearances: a blue line may be seen on the gums, paralyzed muscles may show fatty degeneration, and also wasting of the muscles will be present. Stomach and intestines may show ulcerative or hemorrhagic changes, and contracted and thickness and thickened, and liver and kidneys are also small in size. Okay, medical legal importance: homicidal poisoning is rare. Accidental poisoning actually can occur in workers with metal, okay, so that is painters, glass workers. So these people who are exposing to fumes of this lead can actually get exposed to lead, and finally they may actually end up in chronic poisoning by lead. Okay, and it is actually not used for home suicide, because, okay, lots of doses, and okay, it actually doesn't kill the person instantaneously, right? It is actually leads to chronic poison. And dialkyl or okay, lead oleate or red lead is used locally for abortion. So all these irritants can be used as an abortifacient, right? So red lead can be used as an abortifacient, and red lead alone can be mixed with arsenic to make it poisonous to the cattle. Okay, it can be used as a cattle poison. And finally, lead missiles. So bullet. So these bullet, the shell of these bullets in the rifle firearms, and also these shotgun pellets are also made of lead, right? So these lead pellets and bullets, when embedded into the tissues, the lead will actually leach into the tissues, okay, from these gunshot injuries, and can actually produce symptoms of poisoning within 12 to 48 hours after exposure to lead. Okay, so that completes both arsenic and lead, metallic poisons, poisoning by arsenic and lead. In the next class, we'll see the remaining metallic poisons. Okay, I hope you are preparing for the second internal assessment examination well. Uh, and this week also you will have this internal assessment on corrosive poisons. Okay, this week you have Saturday. You'll have the assessment on corrosive poisons. Most probably next week we'll skip that in weekly assessment. We'll directly go to the second internal assessment exam. Right? Anybody has any doubts regarding the examination topics?